David Allen has delivered for us two excellent books on the atonement. He should probably be considered one of the world's foremost experts on the topic of the death of Jesus when it comes to the meaning and significance of that event. And if you had to pick one topic to be an expert on, it's hard to pick something more important than the atonement. I've already reviewed his larger, and I would say more important work, The Extent of the Atonement. I have both a review and interview with Allen on the channel regarding that book, and you can find them in the links in the description below. And while I would say The Extent of the Atonement is the more important book, his book with the simple title, The Atonement, this is the better book. The Atonement is a 2019 book produced by B&H Academic with a subtitle, A Biblical, Theological, and Historical Study of the Cross of Jesus Christ. I found this book to be educational and encouraging. The Atonement is a study of the subject of Christ's death that was as thoroughly rooted in Scripture as one could manage. Even at 283 pages, the book is a thorough treatment of the topic. This is a book that I would say every pastor or teacher must read in order to have a strong grasp on this subject. That is truly the heart of our proclamation as ministers of the gospel. So if you have a few minutes, I would love to tell you a little bit more about The Atonement by David Allen. Welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books that will help you to grow in your understanding of the death of Jesus Christ, please subscribe to the channel in order to stay up to date with my latest book reviews. Also, give the video that thumbs up, share it with others online to help them know about the works of David Allen. And I want to say a really big thank you to the Buy Me a Coffee members. Your support allows me to cover all the costs that go along with keeping up with Rev Reads, and so that I can produce new reviews and get these out to more people online. And if you have benefited from Rev Reads, I would love for you to consider supporting the channel at a beginning membership price of only $3 a month. Now, I would take this 9-chapter book and divide it into 4 sections. Section 1 is chapters 1 through 3. This covers the atonement from the perspective of biblical theology. Allen begins with the terminology used to speak about the atonement, and then covers the passages in the Bible where the atonement is mentioned in both the Old and the New Testament. Those 3 chapters, for a reference resource alone, they are worth their weight in gold. I will refer to them again without question. The second section is what I would refer to as a systematic study of the atonement. In chapters 4 through 7, Allen looks at the necessity of the atonement, how it relates to Christology, the intent, extent, application, and finally, the nature of the atonement. You could take those chapters and insert them into a multi-volume systematic theology, and it would give that work a wonderful coverage on the atonement for soteriology. The third section is one I didn't expect to find in this book, and that was special issues concerning the atonement. And in this chapter, Allen simply answers the most common questions people have concerning the atonement. Now, some of these questions are dealing with the issue of the extent of the atonement, or common questions that are asked by those in support of a limited atonement. Others are just questions people have, such as, how does the atonement relate to forgiveness? Or one that I've dealt with in my own pastoral ministry, is there physical healing in the atonement? Now, I was surprised to find this chapter in the book, and I found it to be a pleasant surprise. It really shows a pastoral heart that Allen possesses to not just engage with the theological issues related to the atonement, but a desire to help all Christians understand the breadth of the issues regarding the death of Jesus Christ. Finally, Allen covers the subject of atonement theories. Now, while I found this to be a good chapter, it's not quite as good as Adam Harwood's on this subject in his Christian theology, but it's right up there. Now, I personally take the view that any one of the atonement theories listed in this chapter will give you an incomplete view of the atonement. I see the atonement as this grand event where there is a lot going on. Jesus was our substitute. Jesus had victory over the devil. Jesus' death should influence how we live. And to me, it takes more than one theory in order to see all the facets of beauty found in the atonement. And what I found most surprising about this book is that while the extent of the atonement has all the information that one could ever need on that subject, I honestly found Allen's presentation on the extent of the atonement better in this book than in the larger book. I think the restriction of page limits made him sharpen his argument just a little bit. I did not expect that. So if someone sees this book as like a needless addition or just sort of a tack on extra in comparison to the larger the extent of the atonement, this book is not. I also appreciated the repeated emphasis on the need to receive the atonement through faith. The atonement in isolation saves no one. Jesus died for all, but all are not saved. The scripture is clear hundreds of times over. The atonement must be applied for an individual to be saved. And the way it is applied is through faith in Jesus Christ. His writings on Romans 5:12 through 21, on how the universality of the offer of grace must not only match but exceed the universality of Adam's sin, was first rate, showing that Jesus dying for sinners and also testifying that all who have sinned are people that Jesus has died for. He's died for everyone. If you can testify that you're a sinner like Adam, it means Jesus died for you and offers the gospel for you. This should be a great encouragement to share the gospel and also to remain humble while sharing the gospel, because we're all sinners that Jesus died for. We all need the same grace. There isn't this category of the elect that Jesus did die for, and then this lesser group that he didn't give his life for. We all have the same need, and we are all given the same offer of salvation. I also appreciated his distinction between the grace of the gospel in comparison to other graces that God gives and offers to men. But I found this to be a better distinction than what we see in the Calvinist view of common grace versus special grace. So his work on pages 129 to 133 were really helpful. And then my favorite quote in the book is, John 3:16 clearly indicates that God's intentions to save are as broad as the world. John clearly connects God's act of atonement for sins with God's love. Canonically, the logic of Romans 1 through 11 demonstrates this as well. In Romans 11:32, the scope of God's mercy is universal. That Paul may be referring to the people groups of Jews and Gentiles does not change the fact that God's purpose is to show mercy to all within both people groups. The breadth of God's love is amazing. And the only way to truly see that breadth of love is to have a proper understanding of what Jesus Christ did at the atonement and the free offer of salvation on account of what Christ has done for every man. So from the introduction to the conclusion, I found David Allen's The Atonement to be a brilliant work, worthy of every Christian's time. If you want to hold a better grasp on what Jesus accomplished on the cross and how that can be applied to people today, you need to read The Atonement